one check and taking advantage of the benefit of the 3% increase that you get in Sanibel and also in
Thank
Cambridge.
you. Can we ask a new question? Ms. Johnston, and you can, if you want to pursue this, you're welcome to ask a related question to Mr. Boyd, or you may choose another question if you wish.
I would first like to say that that's false information. The entire sum of money, which totaled $10,000, was paid in full and was paid a year ago, and anyone who's interested in knowing can find all the documentation on it. I would like to ask a question because I would prefer to deal with the issues rather than try to find ways to gore someone else with personal matters. Thank you. I would like to ask each of you what you would do with the $25 million that has been set aside for economic development.
Thank you. I would use the $25 million set aside for economic development for the purposes it was set aside for, and that is to assist in recruiting new high-tech, high-wage businesses into the area. Now, before we do that, however, we need to have a plan. You just don't go out and throw dollar bills or $10 or $1,000 bills at some company and hope that they come in. You need to develop a plan. You need to get some expression of interest on their part, and then hope that the discussions will move from there. As a matter of fact, it turns out that in many cases, that money, that $25 million I'll use, but that money is never used because there's other reasons and other things that you can do that the industry will be just as interested in getting a hold of as that. But it's a sweetener that you can use to offer for conversation purposes, but believe me, you need a very serious plan before you can do it.
I would be very careful to keep those monies utilized strictly for what they're for, economic development. Government so often has a tendency of getting their hands on money and then using it for bureaucracy, to hire more people or put people in staff at a higher level, and the money seems to dwindle over the period of time. It doesn't go towards what it's being used for. I believe the county, currently in discussions with them and some of the people from Horizon Council, that the $25 million, it was just an earmark. Now's the time to start bringing in the businesses with it, and it should be utilized for marketing the county, no different than you would market a business to bring in and entice more businesses. And you should also be using, to get more for your buck, impact fee credits and things of that nature, tax incentives to bring businesses in that pledge to bring in more than X amount of people, more than 500, more than 1,000. I'm not talking about sub shops and more banks. Thank you.
Earmarks are kind of a slippery word these days. I would simply like to say that I think before we spend this money that we need a very solid plan as to what is the best kind of new business, new industry to bring into this county that will serve our purposes in terms of providing jobs long-term and providing the kind of economic bolster that we want, because I dare say every county across the country would like a lot of high-paying jobs. So we need to be very unique about and very careful about what it is that we're looking for, and then we need to go out and very carefully recruit. And I'm hoping that the current economic development staff can do it, but I'm a little alarmed at the fact that the motor pool budget goes up at a much higher rate than does the economic development budget, and the economic development piece is critical.
Thank you. Can we move to District 3? Questions for each other?
Sure. Les, in your campaign literature, you criticize and make a lot of allegations about me in particular and our Board of County Commissioners that we haven't properly managed our critical water resources. If you could please explain your justification for that allegation.
I'm not sure an allegation is a little strong, but it is in the literature, but not an allegation. It is a statement of fact. In our county, we cannot draw more water from the DRGR area. Can't drill more wells. We cannot take more water from the river. We have 19 pages in the plan, not one mention of reverse osmosis or decel like this community has. So we have no plan. All I've asked is, where is the plan? Where are the strategies? Where are the goals? Where are the dollars? How do all of these things fit together? And as a matter of fact, we have no plan that defines all of those components and brings together all of the various players in our county.
What is well known in this community is Lee County's been very active and very progressive. In fact, in 1989, I helped co-found CREW, a land acquisition program, and the people voted to support Conservation 2020, which I support to go to referendum. Combined, those two land acquisition programs have now acquired over 65,000 acres of critical lands to protect our critical water supplies, particularly in the southeastern part of Lee County, where the most productive aquifers, the Tamiami and Sandstone Aquifer, are located. In addition, back in 1989, we designated lands called the Density Reduction Groundwater Resource Area, 96,000 acres, to prevent costly urban sprawl and protect our critical water supplies. We also have gone ahead and done a lot of other means to be able to protect our critical water supplies. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I had to do that. My question is, you have continually repeated that you have great pride that you have cut the millage rate 29% over this last period of time. But we just heard from the county appraisers, and they're debating the question, whether property values have gone up 202% or 335%. But somewhere in there, the property values have gone up. My question is, how can you only justify a 29% reduction in the millage rate?
You know, as the eyes of the nation look at the economic meltdown and also the credit crisis, I'm very grateful and very proud that our Board of County Commissioners, with a 40% increase in population since 2000, actually looked at providing a balance to ramp up to provide all the infrastructure required by the State Growth Management Act or federal consent orders from judges with regards to jail space or space for judges. We ended up actually doing some bonds that we issued and also using cash to be able to buy buildings such as the Wachovia building and the SunTrust building to provide the critical office space for the judges, for the constitutional offices. Frankly, I'm very proud of the fact that we're financially strong. We did not have to increase the millage like many other communities. In fact, we decreased the millage this year, 5 years in a row now, not having to go out to the bond market, provide critical level of services. We are financially strong, I'm proud of it, and we need to make sure also that we have the funding to be able to provide that economic stimulus to diversify our economic base, and we're able to do that as what was discussed earlier with a $25 million economic stimulus package.
Response?
Almost all of your examples, Mr. Commissioner, dealt with capital. We're not talking about capital. We're talking about operations. The operations funds went up 125% and population went up 40%. You can't get there when you're talking about physical contract services. We're talking about the budget and taxes, and these people here didn't see any relief in all the things that you were doing. We saw the facilities, but no tax relief.
Thank you. District 5, Mr. Kewen, do you have a question for Mr. Haas or Commissioner Mann, or both?
Yes, for both. As you both know, I'm very interested in economic development. What would you do for economic development in Lee County if you become either re-elected or the commissioner?
Well, I'm already on record as supporting that $25 million that we've got set in a little pot over there, but what I've said about that, first off, it does has, as been mentioned before, has to have a very specific plan before we turn loose even a nickel of it. But my preference, and I'm on the public record as saying this, is I'd like to do something like the city of Fort Myers did when they've been laying in disrepair for a quarter of a century over there, trying to stimulate and bring back downtown Fort Myers. There was new publics that came to them and said, we'll build a new shopping center right there on McGregor if you'll give us a freeze on our taxes for like the first 5 or 10 years, something like that. So publics invested millions to re-stimulate that area, and the city has to wait a little while to get their taxes, but in the meantime they've got jobs and they've got a new building, and part of Fort Myers that was falling apart is now rebuilt. Now you can do that with no out-of-pocket money. That's the kind of thing I would do.
I would agree in principle. We've got to get our economic machine rolling. Working with the states, working with the counties on both sides of us to stimulate growth and jobs and get infrastructure going, and also working with federal grant money and state money. For example, now would be a great time to work on State Road 82, not the developer's part by Colonial Boulevard, but to work with the state, work with the federal agencies, and try to get grants and try to get monies in to get these projects going. We really need that along with these other capital improvements.
No response, no rebuttal? Thank you. Mr. Haas, question for one or both of your opponents?
My question would be for Commissioner Mann.
Be gentle.
Yes, sir. My age, I'm going to classify us the Pop Warner parents.
And what age would that be, say? With all your hair, I can't
43
tell.
years young, of course. I've been campaigning for 20 months. And I talked to a lot of people, especially in Eastern Lee County. And a lot of the parents, want to get kids off the street. They want to get ATVs off the road. And they favor, you're familiar with the Crooms area up by Tampa, it's like a wilderness park where there's camping and there's safe ATV riding and it's permitted and it's supervised. Would you be willing to entertain something like that over by State Road 82, perhaps the DRGR area or over in that area?
There's a whole lot of things I would entertain that would be really beneficial to Lee County if you can tell me how you plan to pay for it. Because you can't buy 400 or 600 acres to run your little ATVs around on unless you pay several millions of dollars right off the top to buy it. Now, you want to take that out of the impact fees that aren't coming in right now, or do you want to raise the ad valorem taxes, or just how do you want to get there? I'm in favor of all these good sounding things, but somebody's going to have to pay for them. Until I see how you're going to do that, we're going to have to put that on the back burner for a little bit longer. That was just for me. My turn?
No, he
To
has
ask
a
a
chance
question
to have a
or read.
response. Does he have one?
As your newly elected county commissioner, I look forward to these little things and working with state and federal money to fund these things. Credits, people that can't develop. Similar to the 2020 program, a lot of people are buying properties and realizing they can't sell them, and they're getting them on the 2020 program to buy them to get, it's almost like a buyout. To be able to make it a park and try to tweak the system, even the 2020 system, to see if the funds are available to have it a county-maintained park. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Mann, question for one or both of your opponents?
This is slow pitch because I like these guys. I just got through a primary August 26th and $140,000 spent against me in a really negative campaign. And I just want to say thank you before I say another word here to you folks. I carried Cape Coral strongly, and I just love you folks for it, and I thank you for it, especially after all I went through and that. But my slow pitch question to you guys is, I was only in office like 8 months, Sonny, when you came to see me and announced to me that you were going to run against me. And Dick, it wasn't all that much later that you appeared on the scene. And my question to you is, was it that the incumbent was doing such a terrible job, or were you just busting with great ideas as to how to lower taxes and increase services in Lee County? And would you please summarize, if that's your answer, would you summarize quickly what all those ideas are? Because I could use them.
That's a wonderful slow pitch. I really appreciate that. Why am I running? Okay, I'm running because I seen there was problems in East Lee County that I thought needed taken care of. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be taken care of. I seen a lot of code enforcement problems needed to be taken care of. And also, I see the economic development problems across the county. We need, and my big passion is probably economic development. And I just feel we need a whole lot more action on economic development than I have seen in the past. I feel it should have started 5 years ago, but it hasn't. And this year, in the budget, you finally increased it to an amount that you're getting somewhere now. But I feel it's going to need a lot of work, and I feel I have some good ideas to bring it to fruition in Lee County and bring a lot of jobs here.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner, this job for me, this is going to be a 72-hour work week job. It's perfect timing. When I went to you almost 20 months ago, I knew I would be retiring from the fire service with 25 years of service dedicated to Norfolk Myers citizens. I coveted the job. I looked at it, came to you as a gentleman. We talked about campaigning, got a lot of advice from you. Still appreciate it. Shouldn't have run, but the people need it. I'm an 18-year member of Lehigh. I see there's still improvement, with all due respect, and I think that my energy and my enthusiasm and desire to serve will push me and get a little bit more done in a short time, in a few years. So you have competition, sir.
I don't have anything to respond, other than just to thank these two guys for a very positive campaign. You guys have been great to debate with and work with, and Ms. Herring, you've run a beautiful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We're almost finished, and I'm going to run through the 10 yes or no questions very quickly, because we're going to invite everybody back up in a few minutes. Do we have enough paddles? Are we missing some?
You want one that says all yes or all no?
Does everyone have one? Number 1, should Lee County establish a transportation transit authority? Number 2, should the county review its position on mining in the DR-GR area to add jobs and boost the local economy? That one surprised me. Should a local option sales tax be considered to carry the county through the tough fiscal times ahead? Given current conditions in the real estate market, should the county delay Conservation 2020 purchases? Delay Conservation 2020 purchases. I'm going to read it one more time. Given the current conditions in the real estate market, should the county delay Conservation 2020 purchases? Should the county focus more heavily on bonding, i.e. long-term borrowing to pay for infrastructure improvements? Okay.
He just realized rates were good.
Okay, I'm getting the speed things up sign. Do we want to do the last 5, or do we want to invite everyone else back up? Go ahead and finish. Okay. Okay, I'm going to cut the last 5 questions. I'm going to thank the Lee County Commission candidates. We wish you the best of luck. Okay, we're going to go ahead and finish them. Good, because they're good questions. Should the county freeze government salaries and benefits?
I'm sorry.
Freeze county government salaries and benefits. Are we sharing answers? With declining property values, lowering valuations, can the county also further reduce the millage? Should public money be used to keep the Boston Red Sox spring training in Fort Myers? Public money.
What do you mean by taxes or?
Public money is pretty much tax money. Be used to keep the Boston Red Sox spring training in Fort Myers. Is that confusing? Do we want to say not the bed tax?
If it's ad valorem, it's one thing. If it's
Tourist dollars, it's the other.
it's something else.
Let's go ahead and just stick it with tax dollars that are not related to the bed tax, which was an issue today. Just,
The question was, should we what?
should public money be used to keep Boston Red Sox spring training in Fort Myers? And we've agreed we're not talking about bed tax money. Do you support single-member districts? Single-member districts? Do you support them? Final question. Should Lee County implement an employee code of ethics? Thank you. Maybe the last 5 weren't as good as I thought. What we'd like to do now is invite the candidates from the previous races up. Do we have everyone? We're going to do 10 minutes of Q&A from the audience. We're going to ask the audience members to raise their hand if they have a question. Following the audience question and answer, each candidate then will have 1 minute for closing comments. First question. They're on their way.
Yes, this will be for all the commission candidates. Sonny brought it up. You mentioned a place for ATV riders. I don't ride anymore. I used to years ago, and I'm familiar with Croon. I've often thought about why isn't anybody working with the state on setting aside an area at Babcock for the ATV riders. We purchased a big chunk of Babcock with Lee County money, but are we working with the state to try to put something like that in place up there? 5,000 acres, all they need.
County Commission candidates, 1 minute, please.
No, we're not presently working with the state on an ATV project. Did you say 5,000 acres?
Sure. 5,000 acres.
5,000 acres, well, that's what we acquired. That's what Lee County owns of the Babcock Ranch, is 5,000 acres. And that's going to be used for hiking trails, horse trails, camping, and that sort of thing, and not ATV vehicles. But is there a need for that? Oh, I suppose there is, yeah, absolutely. But not at that spot.
I obviously believe in equal opportunity recreation. Anybody that's followed my past, I've been involved directly with the youth center, raised $700,000 of private money, and $600,000. Finally, the city of Cape Coral jumped in on the bandwagon with that. Also, the skate park was 100%, 1.1 million, I think, was donated. So I'd be in favor, first of all, sitting down with the private industry and trying to get something rolling, get a location that if they're saying we can't use, and allocate the location first of all, and then work the funds in, because I'm sure there'll be equipment and other things that can offset the needs of the ATV riders. But everybody here should be entitled to their recreation, and that is one that's a big one in Cape Coral. Out past the Yucatan and everything, we had so many issues with the police chasing people out, people getting injured. If anything, a safety issue, we should give them someplace.
I think as a safety issue, there does need to be consideration given to this, but I think that certainly first matter is finding the site. The second matter is figuring out how it's going to be paid for. Public-private partnerships are certainly a useful thing. Given the current situation today, I think it might be very difficult to put more ad valorem tax into something like that right now, but you know, times may change. Some economic stimulus money may come in. We're hearing about all of that, but it would have to be ranked with other priorities.
Babcock is much too environmentally sensitive. It was purchased for conservation purposes, critical water supply, passive use, hiking, and that sort. However, there's already been discussion. In fact, I've been involved with the ATV community, particularly from the Collier County area, although I know there's a tremendous need in Cape Coral. Looking at the Lee-Henry County landfill site, there's about 1,800 acres. And while at first glance it sounds like a deplorable idea, actually many of those in the ATV community support that effort. There's also the potential with old mining quarries, but certainly the Lee-Henry County landfill site poses a viable option for ATV users.
I think it's one of those things that get on the want list, and you have to decide whether it gets on the need list in this economic condition. I don't see it getting on the need list. I really appreciate your interest, but it is a low priority when we're trying to deal with foreclosures, we're trying to get people back to work, we're trying to get economic development. It just doesn't make the cut at this point in time. I'm sorry.
As far as the Babcock Ranch goes, I think it is a little bit too environmentally sensitive. Plus, probably wouldn't go well with horses and other people camping. But I think a good, maybe a combination of getting a possible federal grant, if we can get one of those, or a grant from some ATV companies, and get private industry involved in it, in setting up something, possibly at the dump site, that would be a good idea. Preferably to keep county government out of it, because, number one, you can operate it more efficiently. And number two, you eliminate a lot of liability from the county government being liable for any accidents taking place in the track. And nowadays, they go for the deep pockets, and if we're part of it, guess whose pockets are going for it? Yours.
Nobody nor I wants an ATV track. We're talking about, and you've hunted there for years, just like the OK Slough, Key-Rye. You can dangle a carrot. If you put it out there, there's impact fee credits, there's development credits, there's all kinds of different landowners and people that would be willing to trade fees and units for that. You set it aside. You don't create a managed campground or park overnight. You start the process. It will take a few years in the making, but now's the time where you'll grab a piece of farmland or a piece of wetland and be able to do that.
The land you're describing there, the Babcock, was purchased with two sets of monies, Lee County money and state money. Both of those sources of funds came from what we call preservation dollars, and that means the intent is to keep it in its natural state. So what you're suggesting is probably incompatible with those dollars, and you probably run into trouble. But there are portions of that land that we bought, frankly, that have been farmed or have been mined and might lend themselves to something, because we're not hurting anything that's already been torn up. So it's a good suggestion. I think might be worth pursuing.
Thank you. Question?
Yeah, I have a question for Bob James. Bob, I was in the chambers, and I believe you voted against single-member districting, and now you just indicated yes, you would. I would like to know why you changed your mind here.
Thank you for the question. No, I have not really changed my mind. My mind has always been this: whatever the people want, I support. But what I think they need to have is a rather fulsome discussion of the pros and cons of single-member districts. There are some pros and there are some cons. And I think we need to that. And then I also want you to know that the Charter Review Commission that we've got set up, which reviews needs and this sort of thing, did not support that. And consequently, the one reason they didn't is probably because there was not enough discussion on it, and there was some uncertainty as to whether or not it'd be good or not for the county. So I think that's what I mean, we need further discussion. I'd hate to see the issue killed because people didn't understand it. But I think it's got some advantages. It has some advantages because of the high cost of campaigning nowadays, district-wide, it's huge. On the other hand, small districts do create log rolling, and it's difficult, a lot harder to develop a 5-year plan for the county, a capital improvement program for the county, because of the log rolling involved in trying to put it together. Oh, I have to shut up. So anyway, I want you to know that I support whatever the people want.
Thank you. Another question?
This is for, I guess, the sitting commissioners and those of you who are running. Has to do with the bridges to Cape Coral. It's a pretty parochial question here. We've always felt in Cape Coral that we're not represented by our county commissioners, primarily because I don't believe any of you live here. One of the issues had to do with the bridge. And I know over on the East Coast, most of the bridges, when they were originally toll bridges, once they were paid for, the toll gates were taken off. It's a cash cow for Lee County to utilize those bridges. And the funny thing is, I pay for them every day. My wife pays for them every day. Every relative that I know pays for them when they come and visit us. And here's the other thing, you talk about economic development. Everyone who wants to come to work in Cape Coral or visit Cape Coral to even entertain their friends at a restaurant have to utilize those bridges. And I guarantee you the first thing they think about, especially those of you who know about Sanibel Bridge, how expensive it is, the first thing they think about, especially in this day and age, do I want to spend the money to pay that toll? Here's my question. I understand that Lee County gets the greater percentage of the cash from that cash cow. The supporters of those bridges are primarily Cape Coral residents, and we get a minuscule amount that comes back to our coffers. If we had at least a 50, which of you, here's the question, which of you would support a 50-50 split on the economy that's, the money that's collected on those bridges, so that half of it goes to the city of Cape Coral and half of it would go to the county? And then, if you don't support that, which ones of you would support taking the tolls off totally when the bridges are paid